Hello everyone, Josefine Fouarge here with a new art journal project using Viva VegaStamps. And I'm working in the mini art journal that I created for one of my recent posts for Viva Las Vegas. I didn't make a video for it back then, but I'm linking the blog post where I showed a step-by-step instruction on how I did that. So you can see how I put this together. But now I wanted to fill one of the double pages with, well, some more Viva Las Vegas stamps images. And I'm starting by using some of my tea bags that I recently dyed. Well, that's the wrong word. My husband is making sun tea at the moment. For those of you who have no idea what that is, it's basically slow brewed tea that got heated up by the sun. So you put your tea bags and water into a glass container and you put the glass container in the sun. Since I live in California, it's perfect. So we have been doing this over the last weeks, and I make him keep all the tea bags. We are drying those in the sun. And then I have super wonderfully colored tea bags. Well, I've removed, all the little pieces in there, but I love those colored tea pieces. So while this is drying, quick look on that journal that I put together. So originally, I created this journal out of one piece of paper, as you can see here, and then I cut it up just a little bit and folded it all together and made this little journal out of it. And when I originally created it, I colored like the background, all the main pages, and I designed or arted on the front page. And now I'm working on the inside of the journal. So once the tea bag was dry, I have to be honest, I heat set it because I'm impatient. I want to add some images, and I wanted to continue working with some of the Tina Walker images from the same plate that I've been using throughout the entire time for this particular journal already, and in particular those three sheeps that you can see laying on the left hand side. So I'm creating, kind of a little area where they can sit, not really knowing at this point where I'm going with this, but I wanted to create some extra patterns on top of the background that I already had, because obviously the initial piece of the background, I created that when I, colored in the full sheet of the paper originally, but now I want to add a little bit more bits and pieces to it to, make it stand out a little bit, make it a little bit different from all the other pages. And besides the sheep, I already knew I wanted also to add a sentiment, so that's why I put those triangles in there to for this to be the area for my sentiment. And then I got some of the new Ranger Distress Oxide, not some, I got the new Ranger Distress Oxide color and thought this fits perfectly into the color scheme of the journal. So I added some sprinkles of that, and I'm using the Distress Oxide of that same color to stamp my sheep. And what I really like about that particular blue shade is that when you mix it with like a vintage color, like vintage photo or one of the brown shades that the Distress Oxides come in, it's a really nice fitting combination. While that blue in itself is kind of already neat, I really like the combination of it with that, in this case I'm using ground espresso, with that ground espresso, as you can see here. So then I fuzzy cut those little sheep, and by the way, I find those adorable. I think they're maybe one day I need to color like cute little faces in there or something. I don't know, but I really liked those sheep in itself. I find they look a little bit mischievous. I don't know what it is. Maybe I just like sheep. Maybe it's just that. So I'm placing them where I want to have them, and realized, oh, I'm missing 1/3 area where one of the sheep has to stand on. But before I adhere those sheep, I want to stamp the sentiment. And sentiment is not the same, is not from that same plate. It's not from the same plate where all the Tina Walker stamps are from, but from a different one. And again, I'm listing them all down below. So if I say the names, you don't have to remember that and then find it. I'll list it all down below. And I decided to heat emboss it. And because the color scheme is rather vintagey, brown, bluishy, I didn't want to use a black or white or something. So I decided to go with the copper, and this particular copper has some glitter flakes in it, and then just heat set it. And thankfully the embossing powder is fine enough that the sentiment embosses perfectly without any issues. And it's basically a sentiment from The Wizard of Oz. You had the power all along, my dear, what Glinda the Good Witch said. And I'm cutting this up into little strips because I don't want to, it's too wide to put it into the journal, plus I love it when they are like little bitty pieces. And yeah, then I just adhere them to the page. I used some just glue stick, and I had to go in off camera later to add like actual adhesive to it because the glue stick didn't, for whatever reason, didn't stick either to the gel medium or to the tea bag. I'm not 100% sure what it was because usually that glue stick that I'm using is really good, but for whatever reason it didn't quite work that well. And then after that, I'm adhering the sheep to the page as well. But before I do that, I'm adding a few marks. I'm sorry, I'm doing the voiceover after I actually created the page. But before I'm adding the sheep, I'm adding just a few marks with the white acrylic paint around the sentiment and just all over the page, just some dots, nothing super fancy. And then I'm adhering the sheep to the page as well with my usual Tombow adhesive that usually works just fine on art journal pages like that. So I felt the sheep were not standing out for whatever reason as much as I wanted them to. Well, probably because they use the same color scheme as the entire page. So I'm using the same white acrylic paint pen and outline them a little bit with a dotted line, and that I find that helped. It's a little bit hard to see on the video, but in real life it definitely helped make them stand out a bit more. So you know how it is when you art journal, you always go back and forth. Do you want to add something more? Are you really finished? So, and that's exactly how it went here. I decided, nope, I'm not finished yet. I want to add a little bit more to the background. So I'm just taking a sepia ink and stamp that onto the background, but I wanted to make sure that this dotted line is not too crisp. Again, I wanted to add something to the background, so I stamped it off on paper first and then used the leftover ink on the stamp to add just a slight impression on there. And then just a bit more doodling, again with a white pen and also with one of my new chalk markers. Just a few more dabs, lines, dots, nothing exciting, but just to add a little bit more, you know, action in the background kind of. And splatters, of course, I needed more of that speckled ink. And also off camera, I added a few more white splatters to the background as well. And I think that's when I'm done. I hope you enjoyed my little sheepish page. And in general, my journal, definitely go check it out over on the Viva Las Vegas blog. And then I'll hope I see you soon with my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.